Hello YouTube, Robin Hood Bricks here, and today I'm going to be doing another motorised fairground ride to finish off that area of the city, and this one is based on a principle from the 3rd century BC and an email. Now, absolutely ages ago, I was sent an idea by Guido, who had made himself a kinetic MOC based on a principle called the Trammel of Archimedes. And his MOC was basically a penguin sliding around on his tummy on the ice, but going in a certain mechanical motion driven by a hand-powered handle. Very fun indeed. But he sent it to me because he thought I could use it as part of a fairground ride in my fairground, of course, or at least the trammel part of it. So what is a trammel? Well, Archimedes invented the trammel in the 3rd century BC, and it was basically a principle where the mechanism separates a circular motion into its two constituent parts of the vertical element and the horizontal element. So in this GIF here, we have the green bar being powered by a motor, in my case, and its circular motion is then split into those two parts, shown by the red sliders that are confined to kind of linear perpendicular paths. So what? Well, it makes, first of all, for a very interesting pattern for motion of a fairground ride, rather than just having another one going round and round and round in a circle as per usual. So yeah, I thought Guido was really clever in suggesting that. So then we can add anything we want to, penguin or not. So yeah, a very good bedoing for Guido. And on to the mechanics. Well, his setup was based on beveled gears, which is very sensible indeed. But basically, I've used all of mine in the Dodgems, trying to make it really optimized for reliability, which has worked, I'm very glad to say. So I'm going to be using what I've got to hand, which is basically these incredibly old, huge gears with these great big teeth on that do interlock very well at 90 degrees. So I have made a rainbow brick set up here, which is absolutely huge, but that's just to accommodate these large gear pieces, just to prove the principle to myself. So in here is my turny handle essentially, and that will be turning a horizontal gear, and then we've got all of the gubbins here that splits that motion into the vertical path and the horizontal path. And we can see that if this was sort of a car that would have passengers on having a good time, then you see it sort of not only spins but kind of moves forward and backwards in a really interesting motion that is, well, a bit circular, but is also very different from a plane circle. So, wow, yeah, that looks great already. I mean, this setup doesn't look great, but that motion does, and its full potential, you know, we could take it all sorts of different places. So I like it. I like it a lot. But what we can't do in my fairground, if you remember how that's set up, is fit something like this underneath the ground. Because the whole principle of my fairground is that none of the workings and motors and everything else are visible. They're all hidden between the ground level and the table level. And the gap between those is 3 brick height. And this setup is, well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 brick height. So that is far too tall already. Now, Guido's original one basically had a beveled gear with this whole setup on the top, so that would be attached to the gear going round, and then this would be splitting the motion in those two separate directions. But even this, if we compare it with 3 brick height, thinking there would be a gear underneath it, is, well, practically not possible. And then because he had it, I think, in 4 brick height, so you can get it down to about there. And then you could get it even lower, maybe using these sort of flower or splat gears, depending on how you call them. But I don't know how resilient these are, and also I'm going to need quite a few of them to take the motion from a motor into the middle of a contraption like this. So I'm not sure if that is good either. So this is where I put my brain in gear, trying to basically make this a lot smaller vertically. Good. Well, after fiddling with this for absolutely ages, this is what I've come up with. Essentially a mechanism that's exactly the same thing, but in under 3 brick height. And I will be adding back the sort of ground level in here shortly. But to show you how it works, I've taken that off. And this gear on the left is basically the central point for all of the motion, with another one there, both done as flat as I possibly can to take in the power from a motor over here by way of this small beveled gear. And then we've got that setup that we had before, all done with full width lift arms, just reduced in height using half width lift arms for the sort of second and third levels. And then this is just to raise up the actual moving car above that ground level that little bit more. So quite a simple way of fixing it, really, except we have to be very precise now, because both of these three long sliding half width lift arms need to align with those vertical and horizontal tracks perfectly. Otherwise it'll all get confused at which direction it's going and it'll come to a bit of a messy end. So we have to align this with that ground level absolutely perfectly, but otherwise it works great. So let's add a motor over here and then add our ground level back, which I need to get everything aligned in because we need to get those tracks going. So one track is there, the vertical motion, and one is there for the horizontal motion. I think this should work. If it doesn't, it'll come to a nice sort of noisy, messy conclusion. But here we go. Let's give that a go. Hey! So yeah, with just 3 brick height now, I've got exactly the same action going, and now it's powered and quite a pleasing speed, I think you'll agree. So very happy indeed with that. Mission accomplished. Well, mission number 1. Now mission number 2 was to make the thing in the middle slightly more interesting, because there we just had bricks on the side which made up part of that original penguin's stomach. But this I want to be a car or some sort of contraption that people can ride. And what I've tried to do in here is just put on kind of a wobble plate as well. So when it's spinning around, it can actually tip forward and back with its own momentum. Now, whether it will do that very much is, well, debatable. And I couldn't make it more obvious than that, because otherwise it just goes sort of nose down and basically stay nose down forever. So I've kind of tried to limit it horizontally there. It might be a completely wasted bit of time, but at least it'll give the impression that it could wibble in that direction. So that's pretty good. But now I've got another problem. Essentially, when you've done it all in this bright green, you can see what it is. Well, it's these great big grooves in the earth. Now, if this is my ground level and all we can see, what are we saying? That the fairground workers all sort of dug some trenches in here? It just kind of looks weird. So how am I going to camouflage them? Well, the thing I thought I might do, having just made this really compact into 3 brick height, is actually raise it up a little bit and have kind of a false apron on top of this, which would be very brightly coloured and would be sitting on the grass level, that would have the slats in, and then that would conceal the gaps in the actual ground underneath, and it'd be harder to see through because it'd be slightly higher. Because I mean, technically in universe in Brick Nottingham at the moment, this thing is spinning magically completely on its own on the ground level, on the grass. So it doesn't even make too much sense. So yeah, after spending probably hours making this slightly smaller, basically I'm now going to raise it back up a little bit further. So that is the next problem to address. And as if that problem wasn't enough, there's actually another one as well. This section that's going to be above ground has to fit in with all of my other bright green plates, and essentially they only come in certain sizes, and all of them are sort of even edged, you know, sort of 4x12 or 6x12 or whatever it might be. So trying to incorporate this setup as it currently is, with 6 studs, 1 gap and another 6, makes 13 wide and 13 deep. Well, 13 is just going to be impossible to neatly coordinate into the rest of my setup. So really, I need to make this bit a bit wider before adding in my top setup to make it look pretty. So this is what I've come up with, and I think it solves both those problems in one. We've still got our groove there, vertical and horizontal, but now it's in this very brightly coloured sort of display, I suppose, which means it makes a lot more sense in universe that this would have grooves in it for the mechanics underneath rather than going straight into the earth. Fantastic. And now also it's based on 6, 4 and 6, which is 16 by 16. Ignore that because that's slightly lower. And that'll fit absolutely perfectly in place just by removing one of my 16 by 16 plates. Brilliant. And these gaps I can fill in just with the 1x4 plates that I already have. So yeah, 2 problems solved in one. And what I've done here is only raised it up actually 2 plate height, with this being the new level that those trammels have to fit perfectly with, rather than the green layer the slightly lower down. So yeah, 2 problems sorted. So that needs to kind of go into there instead of this level, and then it can all be mounted perfectly onto a 16x16, and then it should be kind of a sandwich like that, working well and well ready to go straight into the city. So I'm going to have to raise up the mechanism on the inside by 2 plates and reconfigure all that. Now I don't want to have to go through all of that sort of testing again, so I thought the simplest way would just to raise up the bit that those gears are attached at the very bottom by 2 plates by using this setup. And I've deliberately used a lot of black wherever I can, because I still figure that you'll be able to peer through this hole to a degree and kind of see the workings underground, and I don't really want us to be able to do that. So I'm going to use as many black bricks as I can, and maybe plates as well around the other areas, just so you can't see in as much as, well, I fear you might be able to. So yeah, that should be actually 3 problems solved then. We'll have our final ride. Now, this, I reckon, is kind of padded and inflatable in case you fall off the ride, because as you probably already know, having clicked on this video, what I'm actually building is a rodeo bull, and that should be made even more obvious by the presence of these 2 characters, which are called the disco boy. How do you say that? A disco cowgirl. So disco girl. God, that's hard to say. Anyway, these are both from the video line. He was in the series 1 of minifigures and she was in series 2. And I reckon that these outfits are far too garish to be worn by serious civilians in Brick Nottingham. So essentially, they're going to be the costumes for the 2 people running this ride, under the employ of the evil Fairground owners. And then, rather than have this rather horrible rainbow brick kind of get up in the middle with its wobble plate on, I've made this much nicer colour scheme with blue and yellow, and I've even managed to make the wobble plate move a little bit more by changing some of the setup on the inside. And then, well, the only thing that's really missing then is, of course, the bull. So I pinched my cow, complete with udders, from my Lion Castle set, and I'm going to put her, or him as we're now going to refer to him, on here. And you see it wobbles pretty well. And then I've got a blue saddle on there because obviously we need a saddle to attach our riders to. So I'm hoping that we'll get a bit of tipping forward and back. I imagine you'll just sort of lean forward and then go round and round. But even if that's the case, it does look therefore more like it's in a dynamic pose, because it isn't all just held rigidly flat, which looks a bit boring. So that at least implies motion, even if it doesn't allow it. So yeah, this mechanism on these struts with this kind of apron and then with this on the top. Yes, it's going to look good. Now, I did just have one more final panic actually when putting it in its sort of final position. It will get transferred into the fairground on another day. And that was basically the motor was powering this from above, hitting this gear with its beveled gear, and that put it above my 3 ground levels. So I focused on all of this so much that I hadn't really considered the motor breaching the surface itself, and it did. Oh no! But then I realised I could just mount it underneath the gear now that I have enough room, and it will all still work. So yeah, crisis averted. And another thing I thought I'd do is these steps, that's what these are meant to represent, sort of going up on the inflatable setup, look a bit plain, and I thought I could add some of my favourite stickers, tread plate stickers, to them, and I've got 2 of these in on red tiles, which are slightly different, slightly interesting looking, and they're the only ones I've got that are 3 long. Of course, I could chop up some ones that are longer, like 6 long ones into 2, for example, but I figured these would be great. and they're quite readily available, so I can always order 6 more to complete the picture. Well, it doesn't make a huge amount of sense either way, because if you got flung off a rodeo bull, the last thing you'd probably want to hit face first would be a tread plate. But then we never said that this was a safe fairground, so yeah, I still think I'll go in, and then it just makes them look more like steps to the eye. So yeah, I'm still going to do that. So I'm going to put these first 2 on the front one, put this on there and get it all sort of tied in, and we can give it its first test. Exciting! Okay, so I think we're there actually now. We've got it, so it is moving very smoothly in its fixed setup, and we've conquered the fact that we needed to contain all of the mechanism within 3 brick height, which means the rest of the ground will continue all around in every direction, hiding absolutely all of the mechanism. We've got it on its 16 by 16 sort of footprint, so it can fit seamlessly into our existing fairground. And thirdly, we've hidden that groove. Well, you can see it obviously, but now it's in this flamish yellow-orange, it's really hard to sort of see a problem with the ground. And the way I did that in the end was actually aligning everything on the half stud. You'll see here that stud, for example, is in between these 2 and so on. So these are actually double jumper plates that are now available in bright green. So the whole thing is just half a stud that way, so we can have the 1 stud wide gap in the middle, literally in the middle of our 16 by 16 setup. So yeah, very symmetrical as well. So yeah, I've put on the first of those 2 tread plate stickers on there. I'm looking forward to getting 6 more to finish that off, but it shouldn't affect us testing it. So here is our wobbly rodeo bull, as we're now calling her. And let's get a rider on as well. And this chap, he looks like he'd be the guy demoing it. Oh, and we'll have to have some sort of contraption around here with a sort of on-off lever for her to operate. But there we go, ready for our initial full test. Let's do it at a nice angle. Here we go. Hey! That's really funny, I think. I think that looks excellent. Imagine when you can't see the motor and it's just in between everything else. It will look like a really kind of small ride, just in amongst everything else, really quite subtle. Kind of like when we had that splatter frog. I mean, that's only about that big, but it just looks amazing that it's got all the motion in such a confined area. I don't think it does tip on its own. Well, maybe it does a little actually. Definitely makes them look very wobbly. So I like that as well. And I think the speed's about right as well, actually. I mean, probably not for real life. I think if you were on one of these in real life and it's spinning that fast, you'd be going crazy. But in universe, I think that's about the right speed. But then again, having said that, I mean, the idea is to knock people off these things. How long can you hang on for? So essentially, they have to keep going faster and faster. And maybe this guy's just really good at it. So, yeah, otherwise no one else would get a go, would they? So, yeah, what do we think of that? Very bright and colourful. When it's in the fairground, it will be incredibly low profile, which is kind of the vibe I was going for. And then we've got a padded kind of apron with a spinning rodeo bull, not cow, with a man on. And wow, that is a really interesting motion provided by the Trammel of Archimedes, not just a boring circle. I think it is bucking, you know. Wow, very, very happy with that. But as always, do tell me what you think. Well, after all those complications, I don't think I've got time to put this into the fairground, and besides, I want to do a little bit more outside the fairground before I put this and that in. But I am very happy indeed with how this has turned out. It looks great, it works great, and it raises a smile, which is the #1 test if you ask me. So that is really, really cool. A rodeo bull ride. Fantastic. So as always, thank you very much for watching. It is appreciated. Do remember to like, comment and subscribe for more awesome LEGO videos. And if you value this channel, there are many ways in which you can support it. Do check out the links in the description below. And next time on Robin Hood Bricks, it'll be Wednesday, so we'll be doing a brick haul. And you can send something to a future brick haul by using the usual PO box address, as I know a number of you have. I've got a pile of packages next to me. And then on Friday, We'll be doing another video either in the city or in the deep sea cabinet. I know there's a lot of interest in that still. So yeah, we'll see what we get up to. But until then, see you! Woo! How long can you stay on a rodeo ball? Roll up, roll up.